Welcome to Be Ablaze. We're lighting a fire in you to move you from ordinary to extraordinary, living out your blaze for life. I am your host, Polly Hamp. Let's be ablaze. Hey friends, welcome to Be a Blaze podcast. I'm your host, Polly Hamp, and I'm so excited you're here. Today we are going to talk about something that I think hits home for almost everyone. Why is it so freaking hard to stay healthy? So you know that cycle, you start strong, motivated, ready to change, and then somewhere along the way, you fall back into the old patterns. And you wonder, what is wrong with me? Why can't I stay consistent? I'm going to give you some really good news. There's nothing wrong with you. Your brain and body are simply trying to keep you safe. Try to protect you, keep you happy, keep you comfortable, keep you familiar, all of those things. So our body and mind aren't the enemy. We'll talk a little bit about that in our podcast today. In today's episode, we're diving into real reasons behind that struggle. Things like the dopamine cycle and how it keeps you chasing quick relief, how trauma and resistance show up as self-sabotage, and old belief systems from your family of origin that might still be shaping your health choices today. This is a really important one. This isn't about willpower. It's about understanding your wiring so you can retrain your brain, heal your relationship with your body, and finally create habits that feel safe, sustainable, and align with who you're becoming. So grab your coffee, your journal, or your walking shoes, and let's start thinking about health differently. First, we're going to start with the dopamine trap. We live in a dopamine-driven world. From sugar to social media, we've trained our brains to chase quick hits of pleasure. But dopamine isn't just about fun. It's our brain's pain reliever. It brings us comfort. It relieves our pain. And so when life feels hard or painful, we reach for what gives us relief. If you've ever heard any of my teachings and talkings about living in the upstairs part of the brain or the downstairs part of your brain, the downstairs part of your brain is where we're looking to scratch the itch. You've got the brain stem and then you've got the midbrain. This is just a really simple teaching of the brain. There's so many more intricate things out there, so please go do your research. But let's just use language. I believe it's Dr. Van der Kolk who uses the downstairs part of your brain and the upstairs part of your brain as examples. And what happens is when we are looking to scratch the itch because our brainstem has been triggered, all the F words, fight, flight, freeze, faint, fawn, fix, the fight, flight, freeze, where we start feeling discomfort, then we look for dopamine hits to feel familiar. We go unconscious and make these choices from a place of scratch the itch and what is going to satiate either this pain or I just need pleasure. I need stimulation. I need something where I actually feel or feel numb, which is a feeling, by the way. In our dopamine-driven world, we are looking for that dopamine spike chemical. Think about the word dopamine. Dope is in the word dopamine. And it is a spike chemical and it hits high and then drops you low. And you need more and more of it to get you to that high feeling of pleasure to relieve any pain, anything that's bothering you, where your brain stem has been in that fight, flight, freeze, or faint. So today we're going to talk about how to break the dopamine loop by pausing. You've heard me teach it in some of my other podcasts, but we're going to pop. P-O-P, the power of pause. When you feel that desire, when you start recognizing the emotions that come with that craving, that desire to scratch the itch, be this an addiction, which we'll talk about here in a second, because this is part of the why am I not able to stay healthy or continue to make healthy choices, because it's not about willpower, but it is that our body's desire to keep us comfortable, which can keep us in an addiction loop. But when I talk about scratch the itch, I'm not just talking about the types of addictions that are sex, drugs, and freeform jazz. Like we are looking at things that keep us stimulated or checked out for numbness. what do? I said it just a minute ago. We pop. Power of pause. You take a deep breath. You recognize the emotion. You recognize the desire for dopamine, that desire to either check out and start scrolling, or that desire to go eat the big old chocolate cake in the back of the fridge, or eat through a whole bag of chips, or drink alcohol, or even use other substances. You have to be surrounded by people, whatever that is that you're looking for, that pain and or pleasure producer, reliever, pain reliever, pleasure producer. There we go. That's what I was after. When you become consciously aware and you do the pop and you take a deep breath, that breath automatically speaks to your nervous system and your body that you are safe, that you are not threatened, that you can make a choice from that place. And later on in the podcast at the very end, we'll talk about, what do I do? How do I stop making choices I don't want to make and start making choices from a place of wholeness and connectedness? When you start making choices from the upstairs part of your brain instead of the downstairs part, that is when you start no longer needing the dopamine hits. It doesn't mean they won't come up. It just means you're going to be consciously aware of what's actually going on. Now, let's spend a few minutes talking about habits, rituals, and identity. So habits aren't about discipline. They're about identity. When you build small rituals that support who you want to become, your brain begins to align with your new identity. There is a simple ritual that I've been doing for quite some time that has really helped me. My mornings used to be very unconscious, very just rote. And I would wake up, think about my day, shuffle to the bathroom, brush my teeth, go potty, then shuffle out to the kitchen. I'd kiss my husband good morning, ask him how he slept, and then I go to the coffee pot, make my coffee, and I shuffle to my little chair or the spot in my couch, and either I'm scrolling or Bob and I talk, and usually it's the exact same conversation every single morning. And one of the things that I had to do was interrupt that. And sometimes I still catch myself in this pattern. But the first thing I started doing to interrupt that ritual and that habit was when I woke up, when I realized, okay, I'm not going back to sleep. I'm going to wake up, even usually before my alarm goes off. And I'm going to lay there and I'm going to think about my day, not from the context of, oh, here are all the things that you have to do, and you're going to have to make all these lists and have sometimes good emotions, sometimes negative emotions, which would really, when I thought about the tasks at hand, that was actually a dopamine producer for me. And I started my morning with dopamine. And what I started doing is I changed how I woke up. I started thinking differently. I started going, good morning, to myself, to my creator. And I would pause and just start with gratitude. Thank you for the sleep that I got last night. Thank you for my thoughts and my mind. Thank you for the day ahead of me. And I would just start having gratitude. And then if I started thinking about, here's what my day looks like, I'm going to need to shower early because I have an early meeting and I've got this. But instead of doing it from a place of hurried and rushed and unconsciousness, I did it from a place of thoughtfulness and making a choice from a place of connection to have those thoughts instead of a place of brainstem responses. So I changed my pattern and my ritual in the morning. The other thing that I've done is literally every morning after I have my coffee and before I start getting ready, I make my bed. I'm sure so many of you guys have heard this. Some of the top people who are successful and high achievers and all that, every morning they make their bed first thing in the morning. And I do that. And I love it because in the past, I've experienced myself having a scattered brain, just ADHD. I was diagnosed later on in my life, which helped me understand so much about myself. When I start my day with this ritual, with this habit of making my bed, it is the first thing I get to do that's organized. That helps give me a sense of completion as well. I start my day off with completion, and then it helps create even more habits and rituals later on in the day because that's how I started a new ritual. So I'd love for you to think, what are some rituals that you already do? Maybe ones that keep you stuck in a dopamine loop. But what are some other things that you have wanted to implement or that you already implement that you don't even think about being something that's healthy for you? You just do it. But looking at it and going, oh, I already make my bed every morning. I never thought about it being completion. I never thought about me putting all the dishes away before bedtime as part of a ritual and a habit that has completion. And then my mind is clear and I don't have to think about those kinds of things later. Spend some time thinking about what are some habits and rituals that you already have that bring positive patterns to your life, but then also look at the ones that have kept you stuck and interrupt those in a new way that have you live from a conscious place instead of an unconscious state of mind. Okay, we're going to move on to addictions and the illusion of control. So many of us are so addicted to stress, chaos, or busyness because it feels familiar to our nervous system. Healing means learning to feel safe and calm. So if peace feels uncomfortable, that's not failure. It's your nervous system learning safety. When I talked about addictions, I talked about that dopamine, scratch the itch, midbrain place, that's the downstairs part of our brain. And you've got chemical addictions, you've got stress addictions, you've got chaos and busyness, anything that you can add a holic to the end, a workaholic. You could be a ministry-aholic. You could be a serving-aholic where you can't say, I call them yes-aholics, where you're always saying yes to people and never no because that's people-pleasing and you don't want to let somebody down, but you are so freaking burned out. And you wonder why your nervous system is on the fritz. And you wonder why you're so exhausted by the end of the day is because you've given everything else to somebody else. Now, chemical addictions to alcohol, anything that changes your body chemically from an external source, alcohol, vaping, smoking, drugs, both prescription and illegal, alter your state. And when you start becoming dependent on those to either feel something or not feel something, which is a feeling, then you more than likely have an addiction. Those chemical addictions can be harder to shift. But start with the idea that you can change this when you start connecting to self instead of being stuck in the fight, flight, freeze, and you're looking for an outside stimulus to numb you or to hopefully have you feel something. So when we start having addictions and you're working in that place of, I'm trying to be connected, I'm making choices before I partake in said substance in a behavioral way, then this is a place where you're starting to look and recognize and be consciously aware and do the power of the pause, and you're gonna feel uncomfortable. Peace, especially if you've been addicted to stress and chaos and people pleasing, when you start feeling peace, you might actually feel guilty. What is this feeling? Why does this feel so weird? But peace brings awareness and understanding, and your nervous system may be a little freaked out in the beginning. However, you're going to know what true peace is as you continue to move toward that connection of self, your creator, and then eventually safe people. Now let's spend some time talking about hopelessness and learned helplessness. When your past tells you nothing ever works, your brain protects you by not trying again. Hope has to be rebuilt through evidence of small wins. The fixed mindset and the growth mindset. Carol Dweck, please go read her book, Mindset. She spends great lengths talking about the two different kinds of mindsets. And you also can just have that hopeless, so the optimist versus the pessimist. and looking at the two different kinds of mindsets and what keeps us in a loop of making unhealthy choices where we're like, I'm going to make this healthy choice. I'm going to start doing carnivore. And you're all excited and you're getting all these dopamine hits and your body starts feeling physically have energy and you're feeling good. And even though you've had a bit of detox, which is a pain in the butt, you've made it through the detox stage and you're like, yeah. And you start kind of chugging along and maybe you lost 10 pounds in the first 2 weeks. And you're like, this is the thing. This is it. This is what I want to do. And even if you didn't want to lose weight, but you're just feeling really good, it's yay. But then all of a sudden, a thought comes in that says, is this really going to work? Or some friends or family on the outside is, what are you doing? That's so unhealthy for you. Why are you doing that? And then you start second guessing yourself. Or you have a really stressful day at work, or the kids are just unhinged and you're like, I can't deal with the kids today. Oh my gosh, they're driving me crazy. Then you start feeling helpless or hopeless. What does this even matter? Why am I even trying to be healthy? And you go through all of these thought processes, but usually they're so unconscious or subconscious, you don't even realize you're having them. You just know you hurt. You just know you feel anxious. You just know you feel really sad. You just know that you feel really angry or frustrated. And then you feel helpless and hopeless. And then you're going along, you were doing great on carnivore or paleo or vegan or whatever you chose to do to eat to get healthy. And you catch yourself eating Twinkies in your closet. Or you're like, screw it, let's just go out for Mexican food and margaritas because I don't care anymore. And I just need something, I'm just going to treat myself. And then it becomes a hopeless and helpless spiral of like, why weren't you strong enough? Man, you can't even get through that. And then the self-talk and the internal dialogues start playing out what they've played in the past. And you either throw it all away and say, screw it, it doesn't matter. And you go back into that old pattern of why can't I stay healthy? Or you're like, I'm going to suck it up and I'm going to do all of these things and I'm going to keep doing it because I'm freaking tough and I'm going to make myself. And you're miserable. And you feel hopeless in that because you're having to so over control your mind that you're pushing people aside, you're pushing yourself aside, and you're not taking care of yourself. You're doing it out of spite and frustration and disappointment in self without the compassion, without the peace, without the love because of the hopelessness, because of the helplessness. And it's really changing that again with conscious choices, with awareness of what's going on. At the end of this podcast, I'm going to talk about some ways to stay conscious, the whole what do I do? So don't worry, I'm going to get to those parts. I've already given you a couple of little hints of things like POP and making conscious decisions. And we'll talk a little bit more about that when we get through a couple of more points. So, trauma's role in resistance. Trauma changes the brain's reward system. If your body learned survival through food, control, or perfectionism, healing means untangling safety from those patterns. So if you have trauma in your past, whether it's childhood trauma or traumatic events that have occurred over and over again, and you find yourself making choices from that place, because trauma rewires your nervous system. Trauma is an injury to your nervous system. And remember, your nervous system is doing everything it can to protect you and keep you safe. And when it gets distorted, we start making choices from that distortion, whether we turn on ourselves and beat ourselves up because we think we're bad, or we have to be perfect in everything that we do to keep our world very, very safe. And if it's like, I can control all of these things, then it will help me be okay. But it's still your brainstem doing that. It's still the midbrain and the scratch the itch and the dopamine, because control and willpower never work. Healing your nervous system, healing your thought processes. If you're not safe right now and you are in continued trauma, it is very difficult to heal when you're still in the battle. We would never ask a combat person to put their guard down while they're in their foxhole during a war, because if they did, they would get killed. They have to be on a heightened alert. They have to be aware because they're in war. So if you are in a battle right now, if you are living with a person who is harmful to you, if you are working in a toxic environment with a boss or coworkers that are harmful to you, it is very difficult for you to start putting your guard down. And your nervous system gets wired to protect itself. Then you do all of the things unconsciously. You're going to see that pattern there, right? Where your brain is trying to save you. Your body learned survival through maybe food. So you go home after a really bad day at work where your boss was just abusive and horrible, and you comfort and numb yourself with food. Or you control everybody and everything around you. Or you have perfectionism or people pleasing. These are all just expressions of what trauma has done to try to keep you safe. So we're not going to turn against ourselves and become our own abuser because of this. The thing that we're going to do is become consciously aware and start recognizing what's happening. Am I safe now? If you're not safe, then it may be time to start taking the steps to get you safe. If you've had trauma in your past and you are now living in a place of safety, but your nervous system doesn't know that yet, that's time where you can start retraining, healing your nervous system and giving it a chance to understand peace and safety. And from that place, no longer kicking into the perfectionism and the control and the other outward expressions of trauma. Let's talk about resistance and the subconscious. So resistance isn't rebellion, it's protection. Your subconscious mind resists change that feels unsafe, even if it's good for you. So in the Think Differently About Health course, I tell a story. It's not my story. I'm trying to remember exactly what book it was. I want to say maybe it was Erickson, but I can't remember. In one of the grandfathers of NLP. And I don't even I give my own variation. So I'm just giving that little footnote right there. But this donkey, there's all these big burly farmer guys, and there is a storm coming, and there is a donkey that will not get into the barn. And all these big burly guys are like trying to push this donkey into it's like, come on, you got to get. And the farmers are like, we want to get this donkey into the barn because it's safe in the barn. The storm that's coming is going to harm the donkey if the donkey stays on the outside. But the donkey is so resistant because the way the farmers are yelling at it, pushing it, trying to drag it by its halter, all of those things. And the donkey doesn't even know that on the inside of the barn is a warm stall and some hay and feed and carrots and all of that to take care of it. Then this young boy comes up and he goes, hey, can I try? And the farmer's like, whatever, you're just a scrawny little kid. You can't get this donkey into the barn. Give me a break. And he's like, let me try. So he goes up to the donkey and he just moves up towards it slowly and just says, hi, and just starts scratching its neck and starts rubbing in its ears and scratching its back and says, hey, you're such a cute donkey. You're so good. And just starts talking to it nicely and scratching it and just loving on it. And then the little boy, without holding on to the lead from the halter, just starts walking to the barn while talking to the donkey. And the donkey follows the boy all the way into the stall to get its warm hay, feed, and water. Why? What is the difference? How many times are you the donkey and the farmers? How many times have you tried to yell at yourself to have the willpower to eat well, to work out, to do all the health things that you know are going to help your body, but all you do is push and pull and yell and be cruel to? When was the last time you were kind to yourself? When was the last time that you looked at yourself and said, hey, I'm so proud of you. I know it can be scary to come into the barn, but we've come a long way. Our body's not the enemy. We've just made a lot of choices that have caused pain, and we've been really freaking cruel to ourselves. So what if we do it a different way? This is the opportunity where that kindness and compassion to yourself starts following you. And I will tell you, when your body and your nervous system and your mind start trusting you, everything you do from trust creates this beautiful, cohesive healing process that has you move into wholeness, because you cannot hate yourself to health. You cannot force yourself into health. And you've probably tried that. If you've ever yo-yo dieted, you have forced yourself into health, and more than likely, you have gained all the weight back plus some. I've done it 100 times until these last several years where I no longer have that struggle. And if I start having a brainstem trigger, or something is going on where I get frustrated, or I feel that urge of I need some dopamine hits, I can become consciously aware and be kind to myself and notice an old pattern that might be coming up. That's what healing's about. It's not about perfectionism. It's not about always getting it right. It is about you being consciously aware and connected. Okay, I have one more part before we talk about what do I do. So let's talk about family of origin and belief systems. So if you grew up hearing, we don't waste food, or you have to finish your plate, or you better clean off your plate because there's starving people in a whole nother world, and this guilt of you have to clean your plate, or you grew up with other unhealthy messages around food and body image. Like, my goal was to raise my daughters with a healthy body image. However, I would stand in front of the mirror and look at myself with disgust. I tried to not overemphasize food except for healthy foods, that what I thought were healthy back then. I look back at it now, I'm like, oh, I wish I knew different. However, it's what I knew then. But now I can look back and go, man, there were still so many belief systems about my own body that I passed down to my girls. Like, they would see me look at my body in disgust and how much I hated trying on bathing suits and jeans. And I passed that belief system on to my girls, that there's something wrong with my body. And so what are the messages that you got from your family? Guys, it's what messages were passed down from your family about food. Women, same thing. What messages from the women in your family and men were passed down? And were you an ungrateful little brat for not finishing food? Or were you put on a diet when you were 8 years old because you're getting a little chunky? Like, what are the things that were told to you, belief systems? Did you watch your parents, your grandparents hate their bodies or just not care about it? Did you grow up in an obese family? Did you grow up in a family that monitored and controlled food and they were even anorexic or bulimic? And those are really important to look at within your family of origin, because we don't just change our habits, we reparent the parts of us that learn differently. We have to look at these things and go, where did this come from? Not to blame and not to point a finger at, but to give us information, to give us an idea of, wow, I have believed this my whole entire life. And I watched my mom, I watched my grandma hate themselves. Or we didn't care. We just ate when we were in pain. We ate when we celebrated. Food was always a reward. We got to eat whatever we wanted. We were addicted to donuts and ice cream. And then mom would go on a crash diet and we all had to eat chicken and vegetables for a month.
And then we would go back to all the old junk food because we knew that would end. And you learned how to yo-yo diet because of your family of origin or the belief system. So really take some time to look at that because, again, it's not about blaming. It is about information and how your belief systems were shifted and how, or excuse me, not shifted, but how your belief systems were developed. So what do I do? Here are some things to work on. You heard me talk about POP, the power of the pause. Humans, after the age of 30, I believe I said this in our last podcast, we are in a set program. When I say set, that doesn't mean we can't change it. It just means that by the time we're 30, we're playing out Groundhog Day every single day. We are in rituals and habits that we are unconscious to, and we're making choices from that place until we decide not to. So 90 to 95% of us live unconscious and aware. So what do? You become aware. All of these things I talked about today are just a snapshot of some of the ways to think in a new way, some of the ways to actually become consciously aware, where you have to take responsibility for yourself. Let me say it another way. You get to take responsibility for yourself because you don't have to. You get to. And that's a fun part. There's hard times because you're still going to get to make choices from that conscious state, that responsible state of self. However, the outcomes are wonderful because you're going to know who you truly are. The other thing is making choices from a place of connection. We can make choices from two different places, our downstairs brain or our upstairs brain. We can make it from survival or we can make it from connection. Our survival usually is unconscious and we're not even aware until we are. But when you start looking at the old patterns of, man, when I have a stressful day, I just want to sit in front of the TV and I don't even realize I just ate a whole bag of chips and drank 3 sodas. Or I didn't even realize at the family reunion, I ate a whole fried chicken, mashed potatoes, and all of the desserts. And I feel miserable and I didn't even realize what I was doing because you aren't making choices from connection. So moving up into that place of connection and making choices from there, it takes practice. It is a new ritual. It is a new habit that you get to practice. And I highly encourage it. This one's my favorite. Be curious. Curiosity is the antidote to shame. Curiosity opens up possibilities. And when you're curious, it's like, I wonder why I chose to make those decisions. Not out of shame, not out of condemnation, but out of connection and curiosity. When you start approaching your healing with curiosity, it will radically change the way you experience yourself and the choices that you make. Now, this one is huge. This one, I want you to get a pen and paper if you haven't already done that. I want you to make pre-choices. I want you to start thinking of scenarios where you've made choices that have kept you in old patterns. So thinking about, oh, this is a pattern. Like you're coming up on the holidays, right? You're going to get to have lots of experiences, maybe not, but lots of opportunities to experience yourself in old patterns. Before you go into any of those holiday festivities, whatever they are, I want you to think about old patterns and what you do. Are you already thinking, you know what? I'm just going to start my diet in January. I've got all this stuff. I've got stress. I've got all. That's a pattern. So think about that pattern. Or you're like, I don't have any family or friends. So I'm just going to starve myself because that's how I can punish myself and control myself. And I wanted to lose weight anyway. Whatever the patterns are, I get stressed and I drink a bottle of wine. Whatever it is, look at the patterns. And from that place, you're going to make pre-choices. So this is what I want you to write down. The pre-choices are you looking at the pattern. What does it feel like? How do you know that pattern is repeating itself? Like you're going to get to have an opportunity to get in touch with that emotional state. Does it bring up anxiety? Does it bring up numbness? Does it bring up anger? Does it bring up frustration? Does it bring up helplessness, hopelessness. Notice that feeling inside of you, that emotion inside of you, because remember, emotions are energy in motion. Then write that down. This is the pattern I repeat. I drink a whole bottle of wine. I shut down and isolate. I have to be around thousands of people because I don't want to be alone. I ignore my emotions and I make phone calls, or I take 5-hour naps. And naps aren't bad, right? Like wine isn't bad. Cake isn't bad. It's how you use it. If you're eating it from a place of dopamine, scratch the itch, control, check out, numbness, painkiller, pleasure producer, then that's where it gets distorted. And that's where you really got to take stock and look at it and go, this is what happens. And then this is the choice that I make. Then before that happens, it's called, again, I talk about pre-conversations, but I'm talking about pre-choices here. You're going to decide what you're going to do. Like you have scenarios and patterns that you are going to start recognizing. Okay, this happens at work and I get frustrated and I feel anxious because I don't want to lose my job because I have to stay silent. Or I get anxious and angry and then I start blurting out. And when I do that, I go get a big old Diet Coke and a Big Mac and then stop at Andy's and get a big old custard. And what am I going to do different this time? Okay. I'm more than likely my boss isn't going to change or my peers aren't going to change. And so if I get frustrated, I start feeling that emotion, I'm going to pause, recognize it. What choice do I want to make when I feel anxious, when I feel angry? Because your brainstem isn't broken. Your brainstem is trying to keep you alive. Your brainstem is not your enemy. It's what you do after the brainstem has been triggered that keeps you in a pattern of stuckness that might feel like the enemy. And so that choice of going, okay, in the past, I've done dot, and then the next day I'm mad at myself and I feel like crap. And then I'm even more irritable towards my boss because I was so angry and then made all those choices. But this time, I'm going to be curious. Okay, that emotion came up. I'm still angry and frustrated. But instead of going to do all the things that keep me in a pattern of unhealthiness and stuckness, I'm going to go for a walk. And I'm going to eat something that satiates my body and I feel better when I eat it. And I'm going to make that choice. And then here's the thing. Because of that, do an experiment. Be curious. When you do that, notice what happens. You may feel lack. You may feel like you're punishing yourself. More than likely, though, you will feel empowered. Oh my gosh, I have that much authority? I can take responsibility for myself and make a choice from a place, like even though I was triggered and angry and scared, and in my old patterns, I did this and this, and I made a pre-choice that I was going to do this, and I did it. And even though I didn't really want to go for a walk and eat a meal that satiates me in a way that doesn't make me regret my choices, man, I feel really good. I feel really empowered. I want to do that more because that's what will happen. And that's how you change this pattern. That is how you change and move to healthy choices that will be consistent in your life. And even if there's times where you start making some unhealthy choices, you're going to notice it so quickly because the old pattern will come up and it will feel so uncomfortable that you're like, oh, I can't do this anymore. Become consciously aware, have pre-choices, make choices, be curious, and then feel empowered. So if today's episode spoke to you, and if you realized your struggle with consistency isn't a lack of discipline, but a sign your body's still trying to protect you, take a deep breath, and give yourself some grace. Healing your health story starts with awareness. And every small step you take to think differently about your health and your body is a step toward freedom. If you love this conversation, please share it with a friend who's ready to break the cycle. And make sure you're subscribed so you don't miss the next episode. You can also find more tools and support over at TADA, which stands for Think Differently About Health, and where we're here to help rewire your brain, reconnect your body, and live from love instead of fear. Stay curious, stay compassionate, and keep being a blaze.
Thanks for tuning in to Be a Blaze podcast. If today's episode sparked something in you, don't keep the fire to yourself. Follow, like, download, and share it with a friend who needs the fire. Let's keep blazing trails together. This is Polly Hamp, and I will see you next time.